This episode of FineScale Modeler's New Product Rundown features Modelcollect's B-2, Academy's Panzer IV, Azur Fromm's Breguet 1050, and Hasegawa's OH-6. This episode of New Product Rundown brought to you by Hobby Zone USA, the source for all your workbench storage needs.
Welcome to the New Product Rundown, FineScale Modeler's twice-monthly review of the latest kits and accessories. I'm Elizabeth Nash.
I'm Aaron Skinner. Let's get started with Modelcollect's 1/72nd scale B-2.
This is the first all-new kit of the stealth bomber in this scale since testers debuted theirs in 1991.
21 Spirits have been built and they've been deployed to combat in Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya.
The charcoal gray plastic parts are marked with sharp recessed panel lines. They might be a tad too big for the scale, but should accept wash as well. The
boundary layer splitter for the air systems and APU below the engine intakes are represented by a solid step that will benefit from a dark wash or careful carving.
The lower center section has openings for the gear bays, crew entry, bomb bays, and engines.
The body halves fit together along panel lines underneath, leaving the leading and trailing edges unmarred by joins.
That engineering is featured on the wings. Does a plane that is essentially a flying wing have wings?
I don't know. Let's ask FSM's aeronautical engineer in residence.
We have one of those?
No.
Okay then. The trailing edges are almost knife sharp.
The split drag rudders and air brakes near the wingtips are posable, but the rest of the separate control surfaces will need modification to show them in other than neutral position.
Also posable are the auxiliary intake doors on top of the intakes.
Speaking of intakes, the kit features intake trunks, engines with some molded external detail that will be visible through the belly hatches and include front fans and rear faces, and finally the serpentine jet pipes, which flatten as they reach the upper fuselage ducts.
Cockpit detail comprises a floor, rear bulkhead and frame, avionics rack and crew hatch, ejection seat, controls, and an instrument panel molded with the shroud. Pre-colored photo etch panels dress up the various instruments and controls.
Structural details and plumbing detail the walls of the nose gear bay, as well as the parts for the main gear bays. There's detail inside the bay doors as well. The landing gear includes sturdy mains and nose leg with two-part wheels.
The bomb bay has detailed bulkheads, curved roof, sides, and center supports.
The ordnance, 14 bombs that look like Mark 84s, are fitted to rotary launchers in the bays.
The only clear part in the kit is the windshield, which has molded frames.
Decals designed by 2 Bob's Aviation Graphics and printed by Cartograph provide markings for 3 509th Bomb Wing B-2s at Whiteman Air Force Base: Spirit of America, Spirit of New York, and Spirit of Mississippi. The only downside of the kit that I can see is the absence of color callouts for the interior.
How it all goes together remains to be determined, but it looks good in the box.
From Academy, here's a new tool, Panzer IV Ausf H.
Not as sexy as the big brutes, the Panther and the Tiger, the Panzer IV was the workhorse of the German army in World War II.
Yeah, it served on every front that Germany fought on and was the only German tank continuously produced during the war.
The lower hull features a detailed belly with bolts, rivets, and panels, sides with suspension attachments molded on, as well as front and rear panels with sharply molded details.
The glasses plate has finely recessed hatch outlines. An unused glasses and front plate hints that this won't be Academy's only Panzer IV.
The rest of the upper hull comprises an engine deck with through-molded louvers and superstructure with diamond plate on the fenders.
The instructions call for the flat driver's plate, but the kit also includes one with applique armor.
Speaking of optional parts, the kit calls for one of 2 lower rear hull plates, but there's a third unused option on the sprue. 3 driver's hatch plates are also given, reflecting differences in bullet splash guards and hatch surrounds. Those hatches are posable, but there's no interior.
Upper hull details such as fenders, intake louvers, exhaust, tools, and spare tracks for the glasses look fine. Optional parts for the spare links give a choice of open or closed guide horns.
For running gear, the kit uses 3-part bogies, detailed final drives, road wheels with tires molded on, and separate hubs, drive sprockets, with an unused optional set, and 2 styles of idlers. The vinyl tracks have detail on both faces.
The turret with fine surface details has separate side panels for posable hatches and a lower plate with interior detail.
The commander's cupola has a posable hatch and optional vision block sections to show them closed or open. For the latter, the kit supplies solid plastic vision blocks. No clear parts are used in the kit.
The main gun barrel is a single molding with optional muzzle brakes for round and flattened styles. The other end fits into a detailed recuperator housing and mantlet. Inside, there's a simplified breech.
The kit includes a full set of shirts-in with full-length hull side plates, attached to racks, supported by thin brackets. Similar brackets support the thin turret skirts. The area where the shirts-in would open to access the side hatches is separate, but not posable as molded.
Most Panzer IVs were coated with Zimmerit. Academy supplies 3D decals designed by Dev Model to take care of that detail. The printed resin applies like a waterslide decal. Note that the instructions for applying them is near the end, but some sections will need to be added during early construction.
Decals and color diagrams provide markings for 3 Panzer IVs in 3-color camouflage, all in France in 1944.
With Zimmerit decals and terrific options, Academy's Panzer IV is well worth considering for a future project.
Next, something a little unusual, a 1/72nd scale Breguet 1050 from Azur Frrom, a French connection of Special Hobby.
Known as the Alizé, French for trade wind, the anti-submarine aircraft served with the French and Indian navies into the 1990s.
89 of the planes were built after the type's first flight in 1956. This kit represents the aircraft after modernization in the early 1980s, but an earlier version is also available.
Alizés were used in operations in Kosovo, as well as Lebanon, Djibouti, the First Gulf War, and the former Yugoslavia. The Indian Navy used them against Portuguese forces in Goa, as well as the First Indo-Pakistani War in 1971, and with Indian peacekeeping forces operations in Sri Lanka in 1987.
For a short-run kit, the parts look pretty good with fine recessed panel lines on the fuselage.
The overall shape looks accurate, but the NACA ducts around the nose are shallow and a little misshapen.
The wings show more fine recessed panel lines. Slightly heavier engravings outline the control surfaces.
The lower wings have slightly raised locators for separate flap actuators.
The pods for the landing gear, sonobuoy bays, and ECM antennas are separate. The last are simplified and would benefit from extra work.
The main gear includes detailed bays, gear legs, and wheels with detailed hubs and rims. The nose bay has structural detail inside, as well as a strut and wheel.
Under the rear belly is the radome for the search radar, which can be pose retracted or extended by flipping the bay's bulkheads.
Inside, the cockpit has a floor, seats, instrument panel, and a whole bunch of avionics, radios, and radar equipment.
The 4-blade prop comprises 2 blade sections and a pointy spinner.
Pylons under the wings can be outfitted with 5-inch rockets, Matra F2 rocket pods, and AS-12 air-to-surface missiles.
The canopy has well-defined frames.
Decals provide markings for 3 French Navy aircraft, one in early blue and white camouflage, the others in later low-visibility gray.
Obviously, Azur Fromm's Alizé is not a kit for beginners, but in the hands of an experienced builder, it should produce a nice replica.
Finally, from Hasegawa, here's a new version of the venerable Hughes 500, a 1/48 scale OH-6D.
This limited edition kit features wintered camouflage helicopters from the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force.
This tooling has been around since the early 1980s and features recessed hatch outlines and fine raised panel lines.
The vertical tail and horizontal stabilizers are separate, as are the vertical tips. Each kit is molded with its struts.
The tail rotor is a single part, but the main rotor comprises separate blades that lock into the head.
Interior detail includes a floor, front and rear seats, bulkheads, panel with decal dials, controls, and pilots.
To update the basic kit for modern OH-6Ds, Hasegawa includes resin parts for the tail light, infrared lights on the nose, and antennas underneath. A floor ball is also included, but it isn't used on either of the marking options.
The clear sprue supplies a 1-piece windshield and glass for the doors and cabin.
A small decal sheet provides markings for 2 Japanese OH-6s with winter white applied over the standard 3-color camouflage.
The OH-6 is a small bird, and this kit dresses it in interesting markings.
Look for reviews of the B-2, Panzer IV, and Alizé in upcoming issues of FineScale Modeler magazine.
And you can find more new products in the April issue, on sale now.
Thanks for visiting FineScale.com. I'm Aaron Skinner.
I'm Elizabeth Nash, and I compromise this message.
From a cat. Are you settled?
No, never will be.